Good morning. Welcome to Time in His Word. We've all heard messages preached about Peter walking on the water, and they've, I'm sure you, like myself, there's been some really good ones, and then been some that's really made you think about this passage in the Bible in Matthew the 14th chapter about what went on. But my question has always been, what about the guys in the boat that didn't get out of the boat? Because in the passage, it talks about that Jesus had been preaching on land, and then the disciples got in the boat and they left. They left him over there. And then realizing that Jesus walked across the water to get to the boat, and the winds were blowing in that. And in Matthew 14:26, it says, when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost," and they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." So my thinking is, if the disciples, and it doesn't say which disciples, it just says the disciples. It doesn't say it was all 12 or just a handful or whatever. It doesn't matter. It says the disciples. The guys had been traveling with him, being right there in the front row when he's been teaching the multitudes and that. And been with him when he's off by himself to even further learn more about Jesus. But yet when they see him walking on the water, they're terrified. Like I said, that's understandable. But when he speaks to them, then they all should realize who it is, because they've spent all this time with him. And then 28, Peter says to him, "Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water." So this is where the messages we hear always pick up on. They talk about Peter and, if it's you, Lord, call me. And he gets out of the boat and he walks on the water and he's doing really good until the wind starts blowing it out and he takes his eyes off of Jesus and starts to sink in the water, which that's understandable. That's a good, no matter how you look at that, no matter what you're doing, it's a good example of just in our everyday life. As long as we've got our eyes and we're focused on Jesus, we're basically able to walk on water. That's understandable. But again, what about the guys in the boat? Are you one of the guys in the boat? Or are you bold enough that you're willing to step out of, we can call the boat your comfort zone? Are you willing to step out of your comfort zone and listen to God and keep your eyes focused on him and do what he wants you to do? Or are you still the guy that sits in the boat? You recognize his voice, you recognize who he is, but you just don't take that step to get out of the boat and walk on faith that God is leading you and directing you to what he wants you to do. You're more comfortable within the boat. And then my other question is, and scripture doesn't tell us, were they saying to Peter, "Dude, you're crazy, you can't walk on water"? Were they being negative like that? Or were they being positive? "Yeah, you go, Peter, I'm right behind you. I got your back, buddy. If you start to sink, I'll jump in and save you." Scripture doesn't tell us that. It leaves us open for our own interpretation and how we want to view what is written in this passage. We want to view what the other guys were doing in that. But like I said, it's always, and then in verse 30 it says, "But seeing the wind, he became frightened and began to sink. He cried out, 'Lord, save me.' Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, took hold of him, and said to him, 'You of little faith, why did you doubt?'" There's a lot of great lessons there. Like I said, we've all heard some tremendous messages out of this passage. There was even a book written, and I have the book, and I can't remember the title. I was trying to recall the title. I believe it was titled, "Can You Walk on Water?" or "Are You Stepping Out of the Boat?" I forget exactly the title. It's been, I bet at least 15 years ago when the book came out. And it was a really good book. It was written by a Christian author. It was real popular at the time. And I have it at home. I have a small library. I love to read. Gotten out of the habit of it in the last few years, but I have it, and I read it, and I was really impressed with it. It was more words of encouragement for myself is how I took it, that just like Peter, with no matter what is challenging us, if we step out of that comfort zone, i.e. the boat in the passage, if we step out and we acknowledge God and keep that He's there, and we keep our eyes on Him, we keep focused on Him, He's going to lead us to do great and wonderful things. But when everyday storms of life come and blow against us, or cause us just a little chink in our armor, and we start to doubt, and when we cry out, as the passage says Peter did, and Jesus took hold of his hand and said, "Oh, ye of little faith." We all get to that point. But I hope I raised some questions this morning. Like I said, the passage is great. It tells us that Peter recognizes Jesus, and that says, "Hey, call me and I'm going to walk to you." And he gets out of the boat and he walks on water. Think of that, think of Peter. Now, think of yourself as Peter, and you're in the boat, and you see Jesus walking on the water. So think of it this way. So you're all eager and wanting to do something for the Lord, but you're in your comfort zone, i.e. the boat, and you're just not quite sure about stepping over that edge and stepping out into the water, the world, to go and do what Jesus is leading you. And you say to him, "Lead me and I will follow you." And so you go, and as the things around you get rough, you start having a little bit of doubt in your ministry or what you're doing, and you start to lose faith, and you cry out, and Jesus helps you continue. But like I said, this passage has always got me. I've always thought more about the guys that sat in the boat and didn't do nothing, because again, they've all been serving with him, they've been living with him, they've been traveling with him. They should know him intimately. The sound of his voice, his little quirks, how he eats his meal, everything. They should have recognized him. Once he spoke, they should have had no trouble recognizing him and following Peter and getting out of the boat to walk on water like Peter did. But they chose to sit in the boat. And another way I look at this passage is that if God is calling me to do something, I should have enough faith in him to step out of the boat, my comfort zone, and go and follow him. So my challenge to you this morning is, if you feel like God is challenging you or calling you to do something, are you going to step out of the boat and follow him? Or are you going to continually sit in the boat where you know it's safe and yell, "Hey, I'm right behind you. If you fall, I'll help you up"? Think about that this morning. Are you in the boat, or are you out of the boat walking on faith?